to true cost. So until we completely change the economic model that we live in, it doesn't, I mean, I don't know how to address that in terms of policy, but to me it seems like everything's gone totally upside down, and it's all about profit, you know, and it's really not about what consumption initially was intended to be or do.
Yeah, I do have a few things. One of the things that I agree on the single-payer sickness care insurance. I actually don't like to call it health insurance because I think our bodies are naturally healing, you know, natural healing systems, and so basically what it is it's actually access to the sickness care system that you're paying for, and hopefully we need it very little. And it's not quite clear how much disease is iatrogenic anyway, you know, in other words, it's doctor caused. So, but a single-payer system, my argument for it would also be that it liberates human energy to go elsewhere, because when, you know, I've talked to many people who say, you know, I hate my job's killing me, but I can't leave because of the, you know, sickness care insurance, they would call health insurance. So there's, I think that liberating human creativity, this is very libertarian, this is, you know, your conservative friend would like it, you know, liberating human enterprise to move in the direction where one's own creativity and value says, I want to go. And if you can get out of the job system in order to afford your sickness care, that's one way to liberate yourself, to go where, you know, no man or woman has ever gone before, but you want to. And I wanted to say a little bit about the work I'm currently doing on local food, because that's where I am thinking about policy, and I think it pertains here. Number one is that the average age of farmers in the United States is close to 60 years old. If we want to eat, we need farmers in their 30s, you know, and we need them actually yesterday, because really, I mean, we need to, you can't just like turn somebody to farming like you move from one factory to another. It takes years to become a good farmer. So we need policies that are going to allow young people who are interested in farming to get on the land. And when you take a look at that, it actually starts to move a lot of things, a lot of subsidies and regulations away from favoring large-scale corporate farming, which is really a subset of what we're talking about. It's also true that industrial agriculture, 2% of the people in the United States are farming. We are completely dependent. Here in New York City, where does your food come from? I know, New Jersey. But, you know, it's like we are so vulnerable in terms of our food system. And it's brought to us by corporations now, and they actually have hugely strong lobbies that influence these simple things like how much it costs to get a license to you know, raise pigs. I know this isn't the topic of our conversation, but it is, because when the little guy can't afford the license, then we are stuck with corporate pig farming. No, really. I mean, I know it sounds sort of basic, but it's license fees. It's a regulatory environment, and so one of the things that I'm working on is basically scale-appropriate regulations, and maybe this goes throughout the economy, that a regulatory environment that favors mass consumption, you know, in service to corporations, and we became the fodder for that economy. Maybe there is something where that doesn't just head-on say we've got to change the whole system, but that permits a level of enterprise. For example, where I live, we have a local trading currency called the Terra. You know, and it's hard to get local currencies up and running because people are so addicted to the national currency because it's so easy, you know, except when you don't have any. But there's a regulatory environment that favors using the national currency. So I mean, I'm just introducing this question of what regulatory environment, what laws would permit sort of peer-to-peer consumption, peer-to-peer lending, peer-to-peer systems, whereby goods and services can trade amongst us without us always having to move into the money economy to get our needs met. I want to introduce that as a question, not as a policy.
Okay. Fantastic. I would like Dave to...
Was that a question?
Just to kind of comment on what you're hearing and what you're thinking.
Well, I think I want to maybe link to what Vicki was just saying about also working in the local food movement, and to underscore that word local and the word place, real face-to-face, full-bodied community. This brother's talking about community in mighty important ways, but real community is always local. And it's never strictly human. In fact, my hunch is that actually sparking up genuine, nourishing, face-to-face community again simply isn't possible unless we start including the more than human world in our community. That is the actual terrain where we live, the other animals that live there or migrate through that terrain, the plants, what grows in that soil that is born of this specific geology, the landforms and shapes, the weather patterns. What is the quality of the place where I live? And when I journey out of it to come to this land here in the Hudson River estuary, it's like I'm journeying from one state of mind into an entirely different state of mind, shared by all the people here, but also the flapping folks and the crawling folk, even sort of wending their way up the panes of these windows. Everybody here inhabits a particular style or state of mind, but we pay no attention to this. So sorry to be twisting this back away from the matter of policy for a moment, just to say there is, I think we need to underscore first that there's a lot we each can be doing personally in the sense of trusting our senses again, trusting our own felt experience and letting it lead us a bit more. And a sense of place, a sense of falling in love outward with the particular textures and tones of the places we inhabit. Okay.
Any suggestions on specifically how to get there? Any specific tools, or, I mean, sorry to make it practical, but for this audience, I love what you're saying, but how do we bring it down to the ground a bit?
Man, there's so much, but how to nutshell it real fast. My craft, before I became a cultural ecologist, was that of a magician, a sleight of hand magician. And thence comes my fascination with sensory experience and perception, because sensory experience, that's the magician's medium, like pigments are the medium for a painter. But also magic in the sense of, reason alone is not going to get us out of this mess. There is something non-rational afoot as well. And that's why I respond very much to the sparks that arise in this panel regarding pleasure or eros, the erotic. In some ways, it's about opening an erotic relation to everything. Now, in terms of practicality, it seems to me, from my experience, from my work with some handfuls of native peoples on this continent and elsewhere, the simple evidence is that our senses, left to their own devices, spontaneously experience a world that is animate and alive through and through. Okay, boy, this is making a big leap here from this discussion. But just to say, we are co-evolved with all these other shapes and forms of life, all of these furred and antlered and crawling folks and rooted beings around us. And our birthright is to draw a kind of nourishment from being in active reciprocity with the wind, with the ground, gravity itself, as a kind of nourishment. Breathing is not just consumption. We breathe in, but we also breathe out. There's this reciprocity to life. and to sensory experience. But if we continue just speaking of the things around us as a set of objects or a bunch of resources, it closes down our senses. You can't have any kind of a felt relation with an object. So allowing things their own life, allowing a kind of active agency to even the ground itself, certainly to the wind and the weather patterns, to the clouds, to the sky.
All right, I'm just going to jump in right there because did you have a direct comment to that? Or?
I wanted to comment directly to your question, which was what can we do? How can we...
Wait, let me just, before we get to that, I just want to try to link what Dave is saying to policy a bit. Part of it with work-life balance policies, limiting work time, trying to live a leisure ethic instead of a work ethic. I don't know if you've heard about working 24/7, working 24 hours a week, 7 months a year. Getting back into living in the moment, giving less of your time to the market economy. Those types of ideas, I think, are a little bit on the radical edge, but they're pushing some interesting boundaries.
Well, there was actually there was a certain stage. I don't know if certainly when I was growing up, what they were promising us is that we were all going to have to work less because the machines could do the job. And there was a stage where there were deliberate economic policies decided where actually we could continue to produce at a 1940s rate in something like 4-hour workdays. So if we had decided that we would just have a 1940s lifestyle, we could be working 4 days a week. But there were deliberate economic policies and decisions made that rather than let our production flatline and our leisure time increase, that we would increase our production and also increase our work time. So, and what's happened is we've made a trade of money versus consumption versus leisure time. And so this is really actually an important point because also leisure time, the lack of leisure time, by the way, is one of the things that prevents citizen engagement. People always say, well, how do I get people to care? It's not that people don't care, it's that who has the friggin' time to care? Who has the time to do anything? And on this subject of engagement, which you raised, I want to say this. First of all, another thing they said when I was young is that we need an informed electorate, and we all know we're informed enough. What we need is an engaged electorate. We don't need to know more, we need to do more. And the first question that I often hear is, how do I know I can make a difference? And my question goes always back is, the question is not how do you know you can make a difference, the question is, do you want to be the type of person who tries? Which returns to Dave's point about wisdom versus rationality. Like, who cares about cause and result? The question is, what does it mean for you in your life if you actually do something about that which you care? Whether you're able to save the baby dying on the street, you just try. And the same with this. And then how to go about doing that? Well, what we have examples of on our panel is what I call heroes. They're people who have quested after different ways of life. And what they've done is they've chosen, Sheena and Vicky have chosen their own ways and their own ideas, and they just trusted their own ideas. So the question is, what is that idea that sits within you that you've always told yourself you can't do because your mom and dad won't let you, but somehow you know it would help the world, the contribution you can make? Not just don't use plastic bottles, but how can you live a life where you can give back to the world in the way you want to?
And actually on that topic, Colin, you all have a little pink index card that we put on your seats. No. The idea behind that was to write down one thing that you learned this evening, whether a factoid, something intellectual, or something you found inspiring that you can carry into your life afterwards. So at some point during the evening, you can just write that down on the card. That'd be fantastic. And we're going to get to audience questions now.
Can I just piggyback one thing? I'm sorry, I don't want to go on and on about this, but there's a piece of this that isn't being spoken, which is that so many of us are in debt such that we can't afford to step outside of the money economy. So there's somebody can tell me who this was, it's very hard to convince a man of something if his way of making a living requires that he doesn't see it.
Okay, great. Okay, so let's have some questions from the audience. Maybe, is there a microphone to pass around?